Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome and thank you for joining us. This is Farmers Drive, and my name is Gyoshe Mbogwa. Now, remember to get us on all our social media handles, that is Facebook and Twitter at Farmers Media. And you can get me on my social media handles at Gyoshe Mbogwa Facebook, Gyoshe Mbogwa Twitter. And you can get all our live streams and all our production on our YouTube handle. It is my hope and trust that you are well. Probably you've gone to the market, you have now sold your goods, you have now sold your product, or you're still in the market and you're tuning in. Welcome, and let's keep the conversation of the African farmer. We want to make sure that the voice of the African farmer is heard by every stakeholder who is in this industry. You are right on time for the Farmers Drive. So jump in and let us move to the next level. Now, today we are talking about cross-border trading. Mostly, we have heard about some of these, organizations that are coming in because of the farmer that are formed together because countries are coming together. We have heard of the EAC, we have heard of the ECOWAS, we have heard of COMESA, and many other that are coming on board. And maybe at times you only hear of these governmental, organizations and countries coming together, probably when there is some political instability, probably where there are some talks between leaders. But most of the times we never look at them in terms of farming and something that will help farmers. So today we are talking about you exporting, you trading with someone else from your country, from the borders of your country. So you're right in for this topic as we move on. So it is important that even as a farmer, for you to understand that which economic block your country in and what are the policies that help you as a farmer. Yesterday we spoke and said that it is important as a farmer to know the policies that guide and cover a certain produce that you're producing, a certain market. It is important for you to know some of those policies so that you're able to engage with them. You definitely know where you can sell your coffee, where you can sell your tea, where you can sell your maize. It becomes easy for you. We have had many a times that when governments don't have sufficient grain, sufficient sugar, they don't have sufficient commodity for the citizen to consume. And most of the times we hear the governments are importing. They're importing some sugar, they're importing maize, they're importing, most of the times is maize, is cereals, and even sometimes they import eggs and fish. So this is what we are talking about today. What is the benefit of cross-border trading? What is the disadvantages of cross-border trading, and why should you as a farmer engage in one? What is the importance of you as a farmer, you as a cooperative, you as a merry-go-round for farmers, you as a club for farmers? What is the importance of you engaging in one of one of the reasons why you should engage in this? So cross-border trading is when any farmer, any organization, any cooperative, any get-together of farmers who come together and they want to trade, and not just trade in their local market, not just trade in around the borders of their country, but they want to trade even with people on the far end, on across the borders. They want to go across the borders. That is, they want to export, probably import. So this is a discussion we are talking about. Then what is the advantage of a farmer in Uganda trading with a farmer in Kenya? What is the advantage of a farmer in Zambia trading with a farmer in Nigeria? What is the advantage of farmers trading within the block of East African Community, in the block of ECOWAS, in the block of COMESA? We have heard of all these things, and when we were doing our social studies, for those who did social studies in primary, some of them did GHCRE. I mean, that tells you how old you are. But when we were doing that, we came across all these economic blocks in Africa, and probably we never looked at them in terms of farming, in terms of new markets of where we can produce. I mean, we have only heard of ECOWAS when Niger, there was a coup, and ECOWAS is insisting that they might go there to restore, the president. But why? I mean, let's come to this point where we can engage as farmers and take advantage of such opportunities that are there for consumers and for us as farmers. So number one, we said we need to know my country Kenya, my country Zambia is a member state of which economic bloc. So that is where you need to begin. So that is where we need to begin. At times we find heads of state, traveling and meeting other heads of state, and they are signing some documents. They want to have trade agreements. We need to be so keen on that any time we have a head of state from a foreign nation that is coming to a nation, or our president or the head of state has gone to a different nation, and they are discussing about treaties, especially trade treaties. We need to be with a keen ear and a keen eye to watch and see actually what is going and what are the proceedings and what the discussion is all about, and what decisions that they make. Every time we see government officials, heads of parastatals, especially those that involve farming, we need to have a keen eye, look at them every time you're watching news, not just to be lightened up by politics and the rest, but we have a keen eye even as farmers to make sure that whatever concerns us is what they are discussing. So cross-border trading is basically you trading outside your borders. It simply means is you moving out of the borders. And there is a common trend in most of these economic blocs. That is EAC, East African Community. I know most of the times, and we are so conversant with East African Community because we even have a national anthem for East African Community. If you've gone for many government meetings, government gatherings, most of the times we begin with the national anthem and then we have the East African Community anthem. So there is a common trend in these economic blocs to even have a single currency, to ease the movement of people from one country to the other, is the whole issue of passports and visa. So as farmers, we need to to think outside the box and take advantage of this, so that it is not only basically traders who are doing that. It is not only basically these guys who deal with vehicle spare parts. They deal with some commodities, maybe perfumes and the rest. But also as farmers, we can take advantage of that and make sure we are in the line of exporting and importing some of these products. Now, to begin us off, we have economic blocks. We have SADC, we have ECOWAS, and each of these economic blocks have member states. And one of the most important things about these economic blocks, the reason they are in existence is to foster trade. One of the main reasons is to foster trade, in that there is a free movement of goods. There is a free movement of goods from one country to the other, and goods are not in one cocoon of goods must be spare parts. They can be fresh produce. Yes, they can be avocados. They can be pepper. They can be onions. They can be vegetables. They can be cereals. They can be anything that a farmer produces in that. So number one is COMESA, because Kenya is a member of COMESA, and COMESA is made up of many other nations, around 16 nations. But over time, many of the countries keep joining in, and it is important to understand that there are economic blocks for countries within Africa. The economic blocks within countries in Africa, but in a specific region of Africa, either West Africa, East Africa, Southern Africa, North Africa. So it's important for you to know where your country is situated and basically which economic bloc your country is in. So number one, we have COMESA, which began in around 1980, and is a member state. Angola, Botswana, most of the South African and East African nations are members of that. So one of the main reasons why ECOWAS began is to attain sustainable development and growth. In the words of the president as he gave his speech on Wednesday, he said that farming composes 70% of the employment in our country. The whole thing about agriculture. The whole thing about agriculture has 70% of the employment. It's something we can that is astonishing, and probably we had not looked at it in that manner. In that, if agriculture collapses in this country, we will only have 30% of the employed individuals working. 70% wote tutaenda nyumbani, including us. We are a product of agriculture. We are a product of the whole of a farmer's media is a product of the whole system of agriculture. So we are counted amongst the 70% of those who are employed, or those who are getting their salaries or having something to place on their table after their day-to-day work. So one of the main reasons why COMESA and the rest were formed is to foster and to ensure there is development in these countries. So one, if we empower the farmer, if we open our borders, even as the nations, as governments, as states, as we open our borders for the farmer, it becomes easy for us to establish farming, because we definitely know that we are enlarging our markets. We are going beyond what we can see, beyond what we have been doing for a period of time. So it becomes easy for us. We also promote economic activities. In that, in farming is where every individual has something to do with agriculture. Everyone, as long as you're alive, you are buying that piece of bread, which is a product of wheat. You are buying onions. You are buying oranges. You are in that business where you're doing pudding. So every one of us is a product of the whole thing about agriculture, and it also fosters peace and stability in these nations. In that, if there is a shortage of maize in Uganda, then Kenya is there to make sure they meet the shortage. If there is a shortage of sugar, like as it has been said before, we are able to get some from a different country. So it is important that we are able to feed the whole of Africa. In that, there is a country that has a lot of cereals. They have stored enough for them, but there is a country still, or there is a region still in Africa that doesn't have, or is not being sustained by that. Then we have ECOWAS, and as I said earlier, probably we heard of ECOWAS the moment we heard about Niger and the whole coup d'etat thing. But we can look at it in terms of, can we export something to some of these nations who are member states? Can we, and then most of the member states in ECOWAS are from West Africa. What can we export over there? What can we exchange with them? Then we have IGAD, we have East African Community. Probably we can concentrate with East African Community because that is where most of us are. That's an economic bloc where most of our countries are members to. So the main objective of this, it was formed with two main objectives. Number one was to ensure mobility. That I'm able to move from Uganda, I'm able to move from Tanzania, I'm able to move from Burundi, Djibouti, DRC, and we're having many nations that are coming on board. Newly was Southern Sudan. There has been talks on Somali, DRC came on board. So we are forming one main bloc in East Africa. So one of the main objectives was to foster mobility. It's easy even to get an East African passport. You can get a 1-year renewable passport so that you can travel, do trade. So that was one of the main aim of, joining or opening up East Africa. It never began long ago, but began around the year 2000. And so today, as a farmer, you can get, you can easily get, a permit or a passport, a renewable by 1 year, so that you are able to go to Uganda, you're able to go to Tanzania, you're able to do your trading, you're able to export, you're able to go and sell something over there. And the whole thing about the whole issue on tariffs and what you pay for the exports, especially in Kenya, exports are zero rated. So it becomes easy for a cooperative even to engage in cross-border trading. It becomes easy for a farmer, especially if you know that you can go to Uganda, you can go to any of these nations, and you can have you can sell freely, in that you're not disturbed like even before. It's like you're flying today from one of the African states and you're going to Europe. There are many restrictions. As far as the East African community is concerned, it is very, very easy. There has been discussions with the East African community to have three things. Number one is to have a common currency. One, there has been conversations by many of the African presidents, and especially led by the president William Samoei Ruto of the Republic of Kenya, and the whole discussion has been on using our own currencies as African states, and not using foreign states, especially overseas nations that are using we are using their currencies. So number one, there has been a conversation, and probably by the end of this year we'll have had a conclusion. It has been there for a long time to have one currency that every member in any of the nations in the East Africa can use one currency. If you're in Uganda, you don't have to keep on changing. So today, if you go to the Namanga border, you must change your currency to Tanzania. If you go to some other border, you must change your currency to Uganda, you must change your currency to Burundi. So there has been this conversation so that we are able to empower, so that we don't create mobility of labor, but again, the whole issue of currency is limiting us. Number two is a whole issue about an official language. Just having one official language that is spoken everywhere. You go to Burundi, they speak French. You go to Tanzania, there is Swahili. You come to Kenya, ours is English. You go to Uganda, English and Buganda. So there has been the whole conversation of can we have one official language, so that if a farmer comes from Kenya and goes to Uganda, it is very easy for me to converse with the residents of the place. So by the time you get to the places and you want to sell your potatoes, but you can't agree on a price, because there is the barrier on language. And lastly, there has been a whole issue of harmonization of tax policies. That if there is any tax I'm charged in my country, do I need to be charged the same on the other side? So these are some of the conversations that are going on. One final one that has not been brought on the table clearly is the whole issue of having one leader, kind of a president for the whole of the region. But this one is a little bit tricky, but there is nothing as that we cannot oversee and go through. So all this is aimed at opening the borders, so that it becomes so easy for the farmer, easy for that trader, easy for this traveler to trade, come with goods. It becomes so easy. So the whole issue of cross-border trading is something we need to look as farmers. Tukae tu vizuri, uvianalyze na mjiulize, if I'm planting coffee, if I'm planting tea, If I'm planting, vegetables, if I farm cereals, can I get a market in my neighboring state? And if I need a market in my neighboring state, what are the advantages that the government has put in place for me to engage in this business or in such an endeavor? It becomes so easy for us to extend our market. So most of the times, as a farmer, we tend to, think of the existing market. You have your potatoes in the farm, and we are thinking of how you can sell your potatoes in the center, in the town center. And if you have gone far, you can take the produce to Kisumu, you can take the produce to Nairobi, you can take the produce to Mombasa, you can take the produce to any of these towns probably where they don't plant potatoes, or where there is a high number of people in that area. So most of the times you get to the market and the market is flooded. And you don't know where to take your produce. You are in a standstill. And the only option at that time is to sell the produce at an equilibrium. Where we say that equilibrium is where you want to just get back what you have used. If you used 50,000 shillings to plant, to till, to weed, the whole process, the whole cycle of farming, you just want to get back what you have, invested in the land. And it becomes a little bit hard for you as a farmer to now go back with your produce back at home, because the whole question is, if I take this produce, if I take these cabbages back at home, if I take it back to where I got them from, what is the advantage? I'll be losing more. So I'm already in the market, so what I'll use ile bei iko kwa shamba, ile bei iko kwa market, let me sell at that price. So if we start thinking of market beyond what we have been doing, if it's hard for us, if it's hard for one farmer, then we can do a cooperative. We can come together as farmers and we can export potatoes, we can export any fruits. In the recent years, there has been a great improvement on the export of avocados. Huge. It has been huge, and many people have had a market of avocados, because previously avocados were bought at 5 shillings, at 3 shillings, but since the export began, that we are able to export avocados to China, able to export avocados to Tanzania, it has become a common trade. And that is why the whole issue about planting avocado trees and embracing avocado farming has been one advantageous thing. And in Kiswahili tutasema imeshika vizuri sana, because there were new markets that were found for that. The reason why people started farming tomatoes in greenhouses is because there were markets, there were new markets that farmers engaged in, that were opened in overseas nations. So it becomes easy for farmers when we have a market. And large-scale farmers have this trend that whatever they are planting, if I need to plant beans, for example, if I need to plant tomatoes, I need to have a market. And the best thing about the whole issue of cross-border, trading is that most of the times you trade in bulk. Most of the times you trade in bulk. Rarely would you find yourself trading in small commodities, but most of the times you trade in bulk. If you need to take cereals to a neighboring country, then you probably need a whole trailer of cereals. Because you're trading in bulk, and it becomes easy that as a farmer you are at ease knowing that whatever I'm planting, I have a market, and not just a market, but it is a reliable market. So we can embrace the whole thing about and take advantage of the whole East Africa community tariffs and policies. It becomes easy for us. We are still waiting to see if we can have one currency. I'm really waiting for that, because as a farmer you sell, but there is the fluctuation of currencies. You get to Uganda, you realize probably your currency is more weightier than theirs. They come to Kenya, their currency is less, weightier than the currency in Kenya. So these are some of the challenges that EAC has been adjusting slowly. They have been, getting rid of, and it becomes easy. So as a farmer looking at new markets, and looking at new markets is a whole set of dimension that we need to sit and think. And most of the times you realize anytime there is a new market, it is so hard as a farmer to engage in a new market, especially if it's associated with whatever we are saying today. It becomes so hard for you because number one, there are many risks involved, because you are trading in bulk, you are trading in a new market. You probably don't have the whole information about the new market, and you're taking advantage of the policies that are there. So there are one kind of risks that are involved in the whole issue. So it's important to be in a family or in a community where there are farmers, where there are friends. You can connect with people. You can join a group of farmers. You can join a cooperative of farmers. You can start, packaging whatever you have. If it's potatoes, we can have a small, medium company. It will be so easy for us to export, other than exporting it in fresh. It's just an example of milk. Packaging milk with the whole issue of packaging it. You package it and sell it as pasteurized. It becomes easy. Other than I just milk it and I want to take it to Uganda, it becomes a little bit hard. So it is more advantageous when we are engaging in these markets. New markets, we are getting new markets in a neighboring country. It's very easy for us to engage in such a trade as a group. So we need to take advantage again of such. And let me know what are your views. Remember to get us on any of our social media handles, Farmers Media, Facebook Farmers Media, Twitter, and Farmers Media YouTube. Let me know what are your views. What do you think about the whole issue of cross-border trading? The whole issue of you getting a new market in Uganda, getting a new market in Tanzania, getting a new market in Burundi, in Kenya, in member states of ECOWAS, in member states of East African Community, IGAD, and the rest. What are your views? Do you feel there are any risks involved? Are you ready for the risk? What do you think about the whole issue of the whole issue of getting new markets? So why should we engage in cross-border trading beyond our borders? And it is important for us to even understand and know the whole issue of cross-border trading. It also involves trading overseas. We have had African, presidents and leaders going to meet specific leaders. They are going to meet the Russian president. They are going to meet the US president. They are going to meet the Chinese president. They are going to meet in India. So there has been these conversations of the whole issue of getting new markets in overseas. So, and there has been a conversation that as an Africa, we need to bargain. We need to bargain together. We need to begin together as a continent as we look for these markets. So let me know what are your views as far as getting new markets overseas is concerned. Getting new markets. Unakaa unasema nina export to China. I am taking my produce to India. I'm taking my produce to America. So let me know what are your views, especially on engaging in such new markets, and let us iron each other on some of these things. So drop your comment on Twitter, and we're going to be back after the break, and we're going to get your comments on what are the risks and what you think on the whole issue of cross-border trading. Let's meet after this break.
Installing drip irrigation on your farm will save you both time and money. So, how does it work? Firstly, get the right equipment. You will need a tank, drip lines, and a pipe that connects the two. Little holes in the drip lines let water out slowly straight to the crop. This way, the crop leaves stay dry and free from mildew. The tank needs to be raised onto a stand about 1.5 meters high. This will make sure water can flow down with gravity. Drip irrigation can also be easily used with solar power.
The system includes a solar panel of 310 watts. It comes with a solar pump, then together with some fittings to install the pump and deliver water to wherever you want to take water to. Once you install the system, you'll have no monthly charges. In the long run, it's cost effective.
Agroforestry is where you plant trees with crops or on the same land as rearing livestock. This system is climate smart in itself. It helps to conserve soil and water. It makes soils more fertile and can provide food and shade for your livestock. It's also a good way to make extra income from selling wood and timber. Here are some examples of crops, trees and livestock in agroforestry systems. Food crops, pigeon peas, sweet potatoes, green grams, pastures, napier and bracharia, fruit trees, citrus and pawpaws, wood trees, eucalyptus, gravelia and neem, livestock, cattle, sheep and goats. If you're interested in starting agroforestry on your shamba, ask your extension agent for advice or get in touch with iShamba.
Yes, welcome back. This is Farmers Drive, and my name is Gyoshe Mbogwa. Just to remind you, get on our social media handles. Get us on our social media handles. On our Twitter handle at Farmers Media, Facebook Farmers Media, and YouTube at Farmers Media. You can also contact me on my social media handles at Gyoshe Mbogwa Facebook and Gyoshe Mbogwa Twitter. We are extending this conversation and ensuring that the whole issue about the farmer is heard by every stakeholder in this industry. Farmers Media is where we connect, we learn, and we grow. We sharpen each other. And today, we are sharpening ourselves on the whole issue of new markets. And not just new markets within our borders, within our counties, within our sub-counties, within our jurisdiction, whether it's based on your location, division, provision, any of it in your country or in your place, it is based on a country. So we are talking about the whole issue of exports and imports. What is the advantage of you engaging in an export trade? That simply means you're moving your goods from one country to the other. What are some of the advantages? And just to take us through the member states of some of these economic blocks that are in Africa. We have the South African Development Community that is called SADC. Some of the member states are Angola, Botswana, Comoros, Democratic Republic of Congo, Lesotho, Madagascar, Malawi, Mauritius, Mozambique, Zambia, Seychelles, South Africa, Swaziland, Tanzania, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. Mainly this is based on many of the African states that are in the southern part of Africa. Then we have COMESA. I know we are more conversant with COMESA because most of us are member states to COMESA. Some of the members are Angola, Botswana, Comoros, Democratic Republic of Congo, Lesotho, Madagascar, Malawi, Mauritius, Mozambique, and Namibia, Seychelles, South Africa, Swaziland, Tanzania, Zambia, Zimbabwe, and Kenya. And well, this is a common. The whole thing about COMESA is common market of Eastern and Southern Africa. So it has brought together the South African states that are in the south part of Africa, and the East African states that are in the east part of Africa. And then we have ECOWAS. ECOWAS. I know we have had ECOWAS from the whole issue of Niger. That is Economic Community of West African States, formed by most of the West African states in the west part of Africa. We have Cote d'Ivoire, Gambia, Ghana, Guinea, Liberia, Mali, Niger, Nigeria, Senegal, and many of the other African states that are in the eastern part of Africa. We have IGAD, that is Intergovernmental Authority on Development. This was formed in 1996. Some of these are just late 1990s. That is when most of these organizations came into being. And this one has its headquarters, I think, in Djibouti. Is formed by Djibouti, Eritrea, Kenya, Somali, Sudan, Southern Sudan, and Uganda. This improves on the investments and the financial background of the member states. Then we have the East Africa. East Africa, we are more conversant with this. Member countries are Burundi, Kenya, Rwanda, South Africa, Sudan, Tanzania, and Uganda. There are a couple of blocks that have been formed just to foster trade between African states. But a keen look on the East Africa. What are some of the benefits of one engaging in the whole issue of cross-border trading, where you're trading with someone from the other country? Number one, we say that there are markets. We have markets. We have ready markets. We diversify our markets in that we don't depend on that market that is in Nyandarua County, that is in Nyeri County, that is in a certain county, a certain division, but we are getting an extra market where we can trade in bulk. And it becomes easy for you as a farmer to engage in such. So number one, we foster economic growth. One, there is some exchange of currencies over there. We are able to engage with farmers from the other side, and we're able to know their challenges. What do they need most? So that if I plant potatoes, my neighbor plants potatoes, my other neighbor plants potatoes, the other neighbor still plants potatoes, and every other neighbor plants potatoes. Where are we going to take these produce? Because by the time we're getting to the market has flooded. Because you realize there are farmers from Nyandarua, there are farmers from Molo, from different parts of this country that still farm the same produce. What if we just thought of an extra market in Tanzania? What if we thought of an extra market in Uganda? What if we thought of an extra market in Nigeria? What if we thought an extra market in China? I mean, they can still eat, potatoes made in Africa, produced in Africa. So number one, we foster economic growth within ourselves. And number one, we create opportunities, even employment opportunities. So we are increasing from 70% and making sure that we are increasing the same. Number two, we build on regional integration. Regional integration is where we have started trading together, and we are, releasing some of these barriers that were in between us. So we make it easy for one to get a permit or a passport, to travel to a neighboring country. We lessen the tax rules and the whole policies about taxation. We lessen about mobility and movement. So we foster growth and regional development together as we move on together as country. Number two, there are many roads. There are many airports. There are many infrastructural development that came due to this cross-border trade. And as I said earlier, most of the times when we are thinking about the whole issue of cross-border trade, we are thinking of this gentleman who is importing vehicles, who is importing spare parts, who is importing just things people import, electricals, beauty products. But we have never thought of we ourselves exporting. And this is one of the biggest challenges that we face as African farmers. One of the biggest challenges that we face is that we keep complaining of imports. They have imported eggs, they have imported fish, they have imported maize, they have imported sugar. Especially in Kenya, that has been the song of the season, where we keep complaining of what has been imported. But most of the times we don't look at it that we can export. So we can get some new markets over there. We can engage with governments. We can trade with governments. We can take advantage of any time these government officials meet and they are looking for new markets. Number 3, we can diversify our market. As I said earlier, we don't look at the market in terms of my so-called area where I come from. That is the only place I can trade with. I can only trade with my neighbor. I can only trade with a specific customer. But we can think of it in terms of taking these products to new places. We are diversifying the market. We are creating a base. When we were in school, the whole issue of doing business studies, we had the whole issue of demand and supply. That anytime the demand is so high, then the prices go up. When the supply is too high, then the whole issue about price of the commodity goes low. So that simply means if we have a lot of tomatoes in the market, and I know we have seen that scenario, if we have a lot of tomatoes in the market, then the price does not favor the farmer. Okay, so if we can have a way we can source out whatever is excess to us, okay, if we can source out whatever is excess to us, a good example is those who farm apples, because they're in high demand. They in high demand even in overseas markets. So that we not a specific time we have much flooding of such fruits, but when it comes to tomatoes, we have much flooding. So when we are diversifying the market, it simply means we are creating a market base for anything excess that we cannot feed our people because probably they are full, or we have in excess of the same. So we are looking for new markets for such. So we are diversifying the market. Lastly, we get to a point where we only import essential goods. Okay? There are times we might find ourselves, probably governments make this mistake of importing some produce, but we still have much on our market, and this has really caused farmers to be angry. Where we are bringing some of this maize, and probably it's our season for harvesting maize, it's our season for harvesting potatoes, so it becomes so easy even as a farmer. So it is important for us to keep on thinking, instead of throwing away whatever is excess in our farms, what if we come together as farmers? What about coming together as farmers and we engage ourselves in a thought process of how can we be able to export maize, to export potatoes into this place? And that brings us to the same point that we agreed on yesterday. As we are running the whole enterprise, I love calling it as an enterprise. So it doesn't seem like as a farmer I'm just farming so that I can raise my kids, I can pay my bills, nothing more. I cannot invest, I cannot buy a new vehicle, I cannot build from what I have gotten from the farming produce. So as we run the whole agricultural sector as an enterprise, we need to always bring the expert's opinion. That anytime we are making a crucial decision of where we are going to sell our produce, we need an expert's opinion. Where do I sell potatoes? Where can I get a credible market for potatoes? Where can I get a credible market for maize? Where can I get a credible market for oranges? Where can I get a credible market for watermelon? So that we also don't get stranded in other foreign nations. We don't get stranded on the road because we have gotten in the market and we realize, wow, hata huku vitu zimeflani. I'm coming with my watermelon from Ukambani, from some place, and I'm getting into this country, and you realize, kwao hizi vitu hawakulagi. So you also need to understand where are we exporting them to? Are we going to get a market? Yes, there might be a population, but tunaweza sema wao si fan wa hizo vitu, or culturally they don't take whatever you are taking, whatever you are providing to them. In this manner, lastly, we are all reducing the poverty levels. Anytime you see an African farmer, most of the times they are associated with poverty. And why is the case? Why do we have that the African farmer is always associated with poverty? So we are reducing the same. It's because anytime you have a produce, you probably don't get the wholesome profit of what you wanted. Why is the same? So we need to brainstorm. We need to sit and let me see your views in any of our social media handles of what you're thinking of, or what's your take on engaging in cross-border trading. It is a whole new level and a whole new challenge, even as a farmer, as you engage in some of these. So that is why we need some expertise. So sometimes we might not be in a position to have the expert opinion from our own experiences. We said yesterday that sometimes you have your own experiences that shift you to from farming this produce to farming something different, that shift you from crop farming to the whole issue about dairy farming, to the whole issue about you want to farm pigs and many other things. They are experiences that shape you as a farmer. But sometimes we probably don't have these experiences. It's you're a first timer. You're thinking of taking your produce to Uganda, taking your produce to Kenya, taking your produce to a different country, and sometimes there is the fear and the risk of the whole thing. So what we are saying is this: in every step you take, as long as you're a human being here on earth, kila siku, there must be a risk and there must be a benefit. So what are some of the benefits of us engaging in such a trade? What are the risks of a farmer in a village far away will take to load the produce in this vehicle, take them to the border, get to a new country, and start a market over there? And as a matter of fact, one individual told me they went to one of the countries and they were going to take their produce, only to get there and realize that they have guys who come from their country, from their tribes, from their regions. Many of them. You get to a different country and you think you're the newest person, only to find huku Waganda wameja, Wakenya wameja huku. And it becomes easy for you to maneuver the market. That's why you need an expert's opinion when you are engaging in this. So number one of the greatest advantage is that we have access to larger markets. There is an access to larger markets. In that, if we have our produce and we want to engage in a new market, some of these are not just new markets, but they are large. They are huge. It takes a while for you to feed them. It takes a while. So, I can see some of us have questions on what we can export. And we are asking ourselves, now I farm onions, I engage in some of these produce that are easily perishable, and sometimes you don't want to spend a lot of time on the road, so that you don't get a loss while you have not even gotten to the market. So at times there are those risks. So number one, we are saying that we have access to larger markets, and that is why most of the governments, you find, they are busy looking for markets, and especially for farmers. Most of the times you realize, especially for most of the African nations, that word countries that are not that much developed, our main markets, our main export. The reason why we are looking for markets is because of our farm produce. Because we have not gotten to a level where we can assemble a motor vehicle, we can assemble a machine and probably export. So most of the times, and I'm saying this being cautious, that most of the times we are looking for markets for our fresh produce. That's all. Most of the times, I think 70% of any market we are sourcing out of the country is because of the fresh produce. So we want to enlarge our base, even as a country. We want to enlarge our base, even as a group of farmers who have come together, and we want to think of where else, apart from my local village, my local location, district, county, where can I engage in such a market where I can find new markets, I can find new customers, reliable customers. So number one, when we are engaging in such a trade, tunatafuta soko kubwa. Let me say that we are looking for large markets. A good example, I was giving an example of avocados. Before and I think not long ago, there were not much avocados that were being exported. Not much, and not many. But until we hit the whole issue of now we can export the avocados to China, we can export them to this country, we can export them to India, we can export them to a specific country. The whole, in fact, today if you go around our villages, you will realize that almost every farmer has 3 or 2 trees for avocados. Okay? So number one, we are creating an opportunity for diversification of our crops. So there is a farmer who was planting maize and he has realized he's not getting enough. He's not getting as much as he wanted from what he has placed in the whole cycle of farming as capital, and engages in avocado farming, which is probably reliable to him or her. Then that becomes easy for him. Number one, he has created a considerable, a reliable source of income. There will be some employment created over there. And number two, we will still be exporting, feeding other countries and having foreign exchange. So that is what we are saying. We are creating a larger market base. And I'm challenging us, every farmer, wherever you are, we can think of new markets. We can think of taking that step and that risk of getting an expert who will advise us. That's why we will want you to tune in, because we'll be having these experts coming in, taking us through the whole steps of, if I want to export, if I want to begin exporting, what do I need in terms of government policies? Are there, do I need to pay anything in terms of taxes? If I want to trade with a neighboring country, what are the requirements? So we need to sharpen ourselves even as we look at these markets, these new markets that provide a large scale. They are larger markets. They are larger markets because number one, if you're exporting avocados, you will export them in bulk. If we're exporting milk, we'll export milk in bulk. If we're exporting maize, we export it in bulk. So number one, we are having an access to larger markets. Number two, as I said before, we are diversifying the market. And that is one of the aim, as we said, from EAC. One of the main aim of EAC is diversifying the market. In that, as a farmer, we are not relying on one single market, one single local market. Okay? We are thinking of something different. We can even go to, and nowadays there's an uprising system where there are farmers who have been exposed to some of these things. They have engaged in dairy farming for long. They have engaged in exporting avocados, exporting tomatoes, and they invite other farmers to come and learn from what they are doing. So we have a host of experts from which we can borrow from. We have government agencies. You can visit them and get any advice you want. So we are diversifying the market. Diversifying simply means we are not depending on one single market. We are not depending on one single local market. Kuna soko fulani tunaendaga, and my grandmother used to call it soko mjinga. Kuna soko fulani tunaenda, na hiyo ndio tunaendaga kila asubuhi, kila jioni, tukiamka tunafikiria kwenda hapo. And you realize probably the market is not growing. The market is not expanding. A friend of mine used to tell me they used to farm cabbages for a long time, especially in Nyandarua. And the main market was in Ukambani regions. There were lorries that would come for cabbages and take them to Ukambani. But over time, there has been an uprising of farming in I think all over the country. People have taken, they have diversified their farming. They used to farm wheat in Narok, in Kajiado, in areas surrounding Ukambani, even Ukambani itself. But guys are diversifying it. So you realize someone comes, rents the land or buys the land. He's not planting wheat anymore, ameweka cabbages, ameweka mboga. And you realize if your market is far away, you will be losing. So instead of pushing away the whole issue of planting cabbages and the rest, we can think of exporting them. We can think of how and what does it take for an individual farmer or a cooperation of farmers to export something or export their produce. So number one, it is a risk for a farmer when you depend on one single market. And this is the main aim. And I think that's why as a country you need to engage yourself in many economic blocks so that your farmers, your citizens can engage with different countries at a lower rate, especially in policies and taxation. And lastly, we are able to adopt new standards, internationally required standards. Okay? Internationally required standards. In that, if you are selling avocados, you don't just farm. You don't just farm, but you want to meet the standard required for farming such. If it's potatoes, if it's beans, whatever you're engaging in, and especially you find farmers have this saying that if you have a customer you're selling to, you need to meet their standard. So that we don't do farming just for the sake of doing it. We do farming with a certain standard. So if we are planting something, if we are thinking of a new market in some some country somewhere, there is a level of irrigation you need to meet, water you need to meet, some pesticides you don't need to use. So we meet those standards, and it becomes so advantageous that we are operating on an international recognized standard as far as we are engaging in our farms. In the same way, we're able to meet every requirement that is needed by the agricultural sector in terms of taking care of your pH levels, your soil pH levels, in terms of taking care of your plants, in terms of what insecticide and pesticides you are using. So it helps the farmer meet the international standards that are required. So continue engaging with us. Let us know, what is your thought? What do you think about, as a farmer, engaging in cross-border trading and engaging in trading beyond your border? Do you think it's advantageous to you? And if you think it's advantageous to you, how is it advantageous to you? If you think it is disadvantageous to you, then how is it disadvantageous? Come on, unafikiria you can engage in the whole issue of trading. If you think you can engage in the whole issue of export, import, why would you engage in such? Why would you engage in that? So that we can know where is the last and we can know how to meet that. And as we said, there are advantages and there are risks on anything as long as it's done under the sun. Some of the risks, but a few. Some of the risks are market fluctuations, but that one happens in every other market. You get to this market, and probably yesterday the price was a bit high, but you come today in the market, the price is a bit low. Number two, you have competition. Of course, that is normal. You meet in the market, you probably have some other farmers bring their produce. You also need to understand that you're also on the receiving end. So umekuja na produce yako, una realize there are other farmers who have brought the same, and they are also border constraints. But these are being worked on, and I think for a period of time, this has been so advantageous and it has worked in favor for the farmers. So let me know, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts in you coming together, engaging in such a trade, engaging with countries that are member states to some of these economic blocks? What are the hindrances? What will become one of the biggest impediments to you as a farmer engaging in such? It is important to note that when countries come together, they have huge populations. You realize that they are probably produce and crops that are planted in Uganda that we have never seen until they bring in the market, that you are like, oh, so there is a type of cabbage that is different from what we have seen. There is a different type of kales from what we have seen. So we are bringing big populations. We are increasing our gross domestic product. We are increasing the value of our imports and the value of our exports. And it becomes so easy for us. So let's take advantage of some of these economic blocks that are in existence. And anytime we hear our heads of state are meeting with some individuals somewhere from a different country, and they are discussing about trade, they're discussing about our farmers and our produce, where we are going to sell. Let's begin to know where we are having new markets, because new market simply means new profits, employment, reliable source of income, and many other host of advantages. So let's think about it. You can take a moment and think about it. But the bottom line in everything, as we said before, that a good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. So whatever you are handing to your children, whether it's agriculture, whether it's business, let's run agriculture as an enterprise. And one way of running agriculture as an enterprise is bringing the experts' advice. One way of running agriculture as an enterprise is bringing the experts' advice. Always have the experts' advice on board. We spoke of your experiences. They come in handy. They really help in making the decisions and making decisions. If you have had your own experiences, you probably engage in exports, you're engaging in exports. How are you doing as far as exports and imports are concerned? How are you doing as far as trading with other countries are concerned? Is it advantageous? Do you find it advantageous? Even as farmers, we can take advantage of those individuals who are already engaging in such a market. Either they are exporting, they are importing. We can engage with them one-on-one so that we can know the advantages. So anytime you hear a farmer who is rearing pigs, rearing cows, and they are opening their doors for farmers to come and learn. At times they charge a smaller percentage or a smaller fee for you to get that advice. But with the vision of where we are going and the risks that are ahead of us, I think it's important for us and for you as a farmer to engage and to take advantage of that. So these are some of the common markets that we can take advantage of. You can take your own, time. Just get to the internet and just get some of the advantages of countries that are in some of these economic blocks and what you as a farmer can engage with. So let me know what are your views. Remember, our social media handles are open and we'll read out all your views and which country you probably, and it's also a way of you traveling, becoming a tourist, because rarely would you go to a country and not tour some of those places. So you get to a new country, you're taking your produce after, selling your produce after making that money. You can go around as you see the sceneries, as you see the new animals probably, which are wild animals which are not in your country. So it becomes an easy way for you to release the stress, and they always say, "Kwambia mwili pole." So it's a way of you meeting new people, people with different cultures, and as you engage with them, you can come, of course, with a new breed that you can come, of course, certified, new seeds that are certified. So it becomes a way of, expanding your whole market, your whole crop produce. It becomes so easy. Thank you for joining in. This is a farmer's drive, and I hope we're enjoying, because our main aim, and I repeat again, our main aim is to make sure that the voice of the farmer is heard by every other stakeholder. Where we come here, we connect. So we want to connect. We want you to connect with farmers who do the same thing you do. In that, when we are thinking of a new market, a new market that is open in Somalia, a new market that is open in some other place. So anytime we see a country joining in our economic bloc, in the whole East Africa, in the whole of ECOWAS, in the whole of COMESA, when we are seeing new nations joining in, we need to ask ourselves, what is the market gap and where can we engage in such? When we see our leaders engaging with European nations, we need to ask ourselves, so what is the share of the farmer from that meeting? What is the farmer getting from that meeting? In that, tusikwewe tu kazi yetu ni kulima, we are farming, we are not getting the profits, we are not getting the produce as expected, and there are a host of things we need to think about when we're engaging in such, and we need to bring the expert's opinion on such. I know one of the main reasons why one would take a risk of not engaging in such an activity is because of tax policies. You don't know what you're expected to have in the other country you're going. You don't know what is expected for you in the other country. But at times we can count the cost. You can count the cost of what is expected. You can count the cost of what you'll get from such a trade, and probably take. We always say you take the risk or take the step to the next level as we engage in such. There are many other African blocs. There are many other treaties that have been formed and that have been entered and signed by the African states for a long time back then. And some of them we probably have not come into contact with. Some of these treaties that have been formed. So we can continue searching them out. It will be easy for us to have the first-hand information. Then it will be easy for us to engage in such a trade. I just want to hear your views. What are your views? What do you think is the greatest risk? What do you think is the greatest risk of you engaging in such a trade? And what do you think is the highest advantage of you engaging in such a trade? We always say we get foreign exchange from export, import, but somebody said we might also be on the receiving end. We might also be on the receiving end in that we have our own produce, but we have imports. We have our own cereals, we have our own maize, but we are having more imports coming in our country. What if we now focus on what can we export? If they are importing, what can we export on our side? Can we engage in export? And the best thing about exports in Kenya is that they are zero rated. It simply means you are charged nothing in terms of taxation, especially in Kenya. So we can take advantage of that existing, we call it existing loophole. It's kind of a tax planning. So while others are being charged VAT, TOT, they are being charged all manner of taxes, exports are zero rated. Exports are totally zero rated. So we can take advantage of that, especially for those countries that are in East Africa community. It becomes so easy. The East African community, we see it's Burundi, Kenya, Rwanda, Southern Sudan, Tanzania, Uganda, and Somalia has been on the lead, wanting to join. And I think in the few days going that there are markets that will open up in some of these countries, and we will trade and engage in such a trade. So there are many benefits that we can speak of cross-border trading. Many of them that we can speak. And I think because of the nature of our conversation here, we may not have them. But we are going to have experts who are going to be coming, and they are going to engage with us. In that we need to think of Africa as a produce. Somebody said that anytime we think of exports, and I think I mentioned it before, we are thinking of exports in terms of farm produce. Not even machinery, not much, but we are thinking of our greatest resource as the African states, as Kenya. Our greatest resource is exports on farm produce. So if we can take advantage of that, we'll be creating more and more. We have economic community of Central Africa states. We mentioned of SADC, Southern African Development Community, that is SADC. We have a host of these economic blocks that we can take advantage of, and it becomes easy for the farmer to earn more and more profits. So this is all about integrating the market. So it simply means we are bringing your local market on an international scale. So we are engaging and we are competing on an international scale. This simply means what we are farming, what we are taking to the market must meet the internationally recognized standards. And I think that one might act as an advantage and a disadvantage again, because I think not many of us are ready to pull our finances, to pull our skills and skills wise to meet the internationally recognized standards. And I think when we began with the whole issue of exporting avocados, those whole issues of the amount of pesticides that you're supposed to spray, if you're exporting beans, if you're exporting green maize, there are standards that you need to have met as a farmer for you to take and it's actually for your goods to be allowed in a different market. So that one might act as a disadvantage, and that is one of the risks highlighted by many farmers. That one of the risks is that there are many requirements, in that you're not just allowed to farm anyhow how you did it, especially for kales and greens. There is a way you must do it. So I think it also helps us to meet the international standards and produce healthy. You realize that whatever you are required, if you want to trade, internationally, is probably you need to give more capital, but there is more income and more profits from engaging in such international trade. I think it begins slow by slow. We can also think of packaging. We can also think of not just exporting coffee as a raw material. We can think of exporting coffee as a finished product. We can think of exporting bananas, exporting mangoes. I think previously we saw some of the governors who launched some of these industries where we export whatever we are producing. If it's avocados, we can export them as finished product, not as raw materials, but as finished products. If we're exporting maize, if we're exporting beans, we can think of how can we export these as a finished product. And again, as we said yesterday, there are many credit facilities available for farmers. And I think the government is doing and is really working on that in terms of expanding the credit base for farmers. Then it becomes easy for us to engage and think of smaller industries in our region, smaller industry in our homes, that we have milk, we have this commodity that we have produced, we have this avocado, we have these products. We can continue thinking of how we can have it as a finished product so that it becomes easy for us to export. A good example is tomatoes. Tomatoes, you probably need good packaging if you actually need to export. But what if we have it as a finished product? What if we have our tea as a finished product? What if we continue having our coffee, our groundnuts, whatever we produce in our local area, so we can be processed into finished product. That way it becomes so easy for us to engage in such a trade. So this way we'll be minimizing any risks that are involved in such a trade. And especially there are always fears. There are always fears if you're a first timer in anything. It becomes easy for us when we come together, and it helps us to erase the whole issue of risks, of the fears, and getting into a place where we have convergence of thoughts, where we come think together, what are the policies we need to make as far as farming is concerned. And I say it, and I'll keep on repeating, that we need to run our ventures as businesses. Let's think of them as businesses, and let us think of them as something we are building for our future generations. So most of the policies that come up that are brought by countries, their main aim is countering fluctuations of currencies. And as we say, this is one of the greatest risks and disadvantage of this kind of a market. Yes, we have broader markets. We have reliable markets, but one of the disadvantages is when prices fluctuate. I think that's the greatest disadvantage, when prices fluctuate. And I think this is why most of these economic blocs want to have one currency. There has been a conversation that eventually we will have one currency in Africa, which seems a little bit hard, because there are countries that have high value of currency, others have low values of currency. So having a meeting point actually simply means the others will come low, others will go high. But having one currency, even as African member states, it will work in handy to ensuring that the risks of a farmer are reduced. But the other advantage of the whole issue is that most of the times you find farmers don't export. Most of the times you find farmers sell, then there are brokers in between who sell to other companies, and the companies export. So most of the times farmers don't have one-on-one engagement with the market, one-on-one engagement with the consumer on the other side. So that becomes let's say a disadvantage, because you basically don't know what the other side requires most. So you'll be trained in producing what you're producing. You'll be trained in not knowing what are the demands of the market overseas, what are the demands of the markets or beyond the border where you are. So you become chained on that. So I think if we all agree, if we connect with other farmers, if we allow ourselves to learn and grow in the same stature and engage in some of these things, I think it will become so easy for us. Let me know, what are some of your risks? What are some of your thoughts on the whole issue of engaging in cross-border trade? And one person said that cross-border trade plays a crucial role in Kenya's economical development, regional cooperation, and the overall integration with its neighboring countries. If there is one way to bring African countries together, it's through this. But it's also important to note that membership of some of these regional blocs change over time. A country might be a member of ECOWAS, but after 1 year, because of probably the change of regime, the change of policies, they want to find a bloc that favors them. So some of these thing changes. So I know we highlighted some of the positive impacts of such things is that you get to these countries, you find the new technologies that are there, you get to new farmers who are beyond your border, there is interaction, you get to know what are their requirements in terms of the market, what does their market require. I know this is one of the problems with the whole issue of African countries. There is a lot of corruption. It becomes so hard. Lastly, I want us to check on what, as a farmer, what steps would you take to position yourself for a success, especially if you want to engage in such a trade? Now, let's say you're in this country and you want to engage in cross-border trading. What are some of the steps? How do you position yourself for such? So number one is that you need to understand the trade regulations. That's why I continually say we need to run the whole farming as an enterprise. That simply means we need an expert's advice on the table. So we need to find someone, find individuals, find corporations, find government agencies that deal with exports, imports, so it becomes easy for you as a trader or for us as farmers to understand some of the regulations that are there. There are regulations that guide imports, there are regulations that guide exports. Are there any documentations needed? What specific information do I need to have? What specific offices do I need to visit? So that becomes so easy for you as a farmer, in that you definitely know what is required for you. Number two is market research. Most of the times you find in the websites of most of these economic blocs, government parastatals, they have data for the market. They have data for what they deal with. Is the market, they have the data for the same. So that's where we can identify new markets. So we need to be conversant with the research that it's going on. So that's how we are able to understand the whole issue of demand, supply, pricing, and competition in these markets. We definitely know probably there are countries you cannot export maize, not because the policies do not favor, but because probably that is what they plant most. So they have it in plenty, probably it's flooding the market, but there are countries you can take, there are markets you can take your produce and it's received nice. Partnerships. As farmers, we need to form partnerships. We need to meet with organizations, we need to meet as farmers, form our own partnership that will help us as farmers even to engage in such a trade. Most of the times, and we said, at times you export in bulk. You export in bulk, and most of the times you realize probably your produce is not enough to meet the standard as is required in terms of exporting, in terms of hitting the jackpot and getting a profit from engaging in that market. So mara mingi utapata you realize you probably don't have enough produce to meet that level. So we need to partner even as farmers. That way we'll be able to have more information about the market. We'll be able to navigate and have the logistics about the market. So if I'm exporting or if I want to get to Tanzania and I'm probably in Nakuru or some place around those counties, so I need to know what is the logistic of getting to the border, what is the logistic of getting to the market. And lastly, anytime we come together, we have a bargaining power. Anytime we come together, we have a bargaining power in that this is our price, it is a fixed price, and there is nothing as a consumer or a customer you can do about the whole price. Number 4 is about quality control and standards compliance. Together, we're able to know, when you have this information, what is the quality required for this produce? What is the quality required for this? What is the standard for this specific crop that I am planting? So you ensure that you meet the necessary standards. The seed that you're using, is it what is tested, it's proven, it's approved, or are you planting something different? So these are some of the standards we need to know. So as far as you want to engage, if you want to engage in such a trade, we need to place ourselves where we have quality controls and standard compliance. So if it's the pH levels, this specific crop is supposed to be planted with this amount of fertilizer, this amount of pH levels in your soil. So we need to prepare ourselves for that. We have packaging and labeling. So if we are producing our crop, if we want to engage in a market, how do we package? Do we label? Okay, so most of the times, and especially this has happened with milk, where farmers come together and they join together, they form a cooperative and they start producing their own milk. So they have their way of packaging, they have their way of branding. So if we want to engage in such a trade, where we want to go to external markets, we need to think and ask ourselves, how are we going to package? How are we going to brand ourselves? Okay, so it becomes so easy for us to get into the markets with properly packaged goods. They are well labeled, they meet the international requirements, and above all, they become attractive. They become attractive, they become so informative, and it helps your product to become outstanding. This will happen especially if we are not taking our products as raw materials. It is a finished product. We can think of how can we package it better, how can we have good colors, good information on top of it that it calls a consumer from afar. One of the most important things is the whole issue of transport and logistics. Transport and logistics. How do we meet? How do we get to these markets? How far are they? How do we get to these markets and many other? So as we are speaking of transport and logistics, I'm going to travel kidogo for this short commercial break. Now remember to get us on our social media handles, that is Farmers Media, Twitter and Facebook. Let us engage there. Let us continue the conversation. Let us have the farmers conversation ongoing. You can also get me on my social media handles at Goshen Bogwa, Twitter, and Goshen Bogwa, Facebook. We are taking a short break. We'll be back even as we seek how do you position yourself as a farmer in terms of engaging in such a trade.
The heart of any shamba lies in its soil. Because soil is so precious, it needs to be managed really carefully. A good place to start is with a soil test. This will tell you how healthy your soil is, its pH levels, what type of soil it is, which crops you can grow in your soil, and advice on which fertilizer is best to use. If you follow the soil test recommendations, it can boost your yields. So, how do you take a soil test sample? Firstly, dig up soil samples. Use a soil auger or panga to take a sample 1 feet deep in a zigzag pattern across your shamba. You will need at least 10 samples. Mix all the different samples together in a bucket. The soil is now ready to be scanned and tested. You can find out about how to get your soil tested by contacting your extension officer. Alternatively, contact a Ministry of Agriculture research station near you. A soil test costs about as much as 1 bag of maize. You should do a soil test at least every 3 to 5 years.
Thank you for tuning in. This is Farmers Drive. My name is Gyoshe Mbogwa, and we're engaging with you as a farmer as we ensure that the conversation about the farmer is on air and is getting to the right people and the right people who are supposed to get this information to ensure that we are transforming the life of the African farmer. So we're here to make sure that we are connecting, we are growing together, and we are learning as farmers. You can get us on our social media handles. Remember to drop a comment, any question you have, and what is your view on the whole issue of cross-border trading, where we are engaging with markets beyond our borders. Okay, what are the risks involved? What do you think about the whole issue? Now, we were speaking of as a farmer, you need to position yourself. You need to position yourself for such a market. And we have spoken of, knowing government policies, packaging, logistics, and the rest. We can also seek government support on the same in terms of what they can provide, in terms of information, credit facilities, trading assistance, and any other trade-related issues. It is important to understand that our greatest produce as African nations is farm produce. Okay, we need also to be financially ready to know how much does it cost in terms of getting to our market, the documentation required in terms of customs and excise duties. We also need to build relationships with buyers, with importers, with trust agents, with some of these importing agents, exporting agents. So that is where we can get our information. And one of the basic thing is always to stay informed. We have said anytime we hear of treaties being signed by heads of states, by government officials, we need to be on the lookout. What are they saying? Does it favor a crop that I have? Does it favor my produce? Does it favor me? So these are some of the things that we need to understand and need to have. Being well informed, it will help us make strategic decisions for our farming in this. By taking these steps and being proactive in accessing cross-border trade opportunities, every farmer in Kenya can expand their markets and potentially improve their livelihoods through increased income and business growth. So we want to make sure that as a farmer we have an excess amount of money, going to make sure that we are adding a parcel of land, we are buying that machinery that is required, we are able to put up a small medium company where we can produce our goods and have them extra produced. So I want to hear what are your some of your concerns in the whole of this discussion about cross border trading. We need to understand that every country has their main exports, has their main imports, and it's also important for us to be conversant with that. Some of the exports we have as a country, that is Kenya, we have tea, we have coffee, we have horticultural products, we have processed foods, we also have textiles, we have cement, and that is what we mainly export, especially in East Africa. Imports, most of the imports we get them from Uganda and Tanzania, and most of them are agricultural products and raw materials for industry. These are some of the things that we import. So this is what we are saying. We need to have the right information as far as exports and new markets are concerned. I want to know, what are your views in cross-border trading? What are your risks, and what do you think is the greatest benefit? And we also share our experiences in terms of what have we experienced. What are some of our experiences? Was there a loss? Was there a profit? What was your first experience when you engaged in a new market? Not necessarily beyond our borders, but any new market that you engaged with. I hope that you have gotten 1 or 2 points and you have learned some information, and we are going to keep on making sure that you are well informed of and well you have the right information. So you have the right information that is needed to engage in such markets. This is a Farmers Media, where we connect, we learn, and we grow. Thank you for joining me in this wonderful show. If it weren't for you, we would not be here. We are amongst the 70% that have been employed by the whole of the agricultural sector, and we take pride in always coming to the radio waves to speak to you, to make sure the voice of the farmer is heard, to bring you the expertise that is required, to bring you the information that is required. And we thank you for every feedback that you give us. We don't take it for granted. We are happy that you are communicating and keeping the conversation going. My name is Yoshem Bogwa. This is a Farmers Drive. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your continued support that you're giving us. And let's meet same time, same day, same time on Monday as we continue with the conversation about the farmer. And finally, it's a weekend. I wish you all the best as the African farmer. Let's be on the lookout. Take care of ourselves. Let's be on the lookout for the new markets. Let's be on the lookout for the new policies that the government is bringing on board. So let's meet same time. My name is Yoshem Bogwa. See you then.
Installing drip irrigation on your farm will save you both time and money. So, how does it work? Firstly, get the right equipment. You will need a tank, drip lines, and a pipe that connects the two. Little holes in the drip lines let water out slowly straight to the crop. This way, the crop leaves stay dry and free from mildew. The tank needs to be raised onto a stand about 1.5 meters high. This will make sure water can flow down with gravity. Drip irrigation can also be easily used with solar power.
The system includes a solar panel of 310 watts. It comes with a solar pump, then together with some fittings to install the pump and deliver water to wherever you want to take water to. Once you install the system, you'll have no monthly charges. In the long run, it's cost effective.
Agroforestry is where you plant trees with crops or on the same land as rearing livestock. This system is climate smart in itself. It helps to conserve soil and water. It makes soils more fertile and can provide food and shade for your livestock. It's also a good way to make extra income from selling wood and timber. Here are some examples of crops, trees and livestock in agroforestry systems. Food crops, pigeon peas, sweet potatoes, green grams, pastures, napier and bracharia, fruit trees, citrus and pawpaws, wood trees, eucalyptus, gravelia and neem, livestock, cattle, sheep and goats. If you're interested in starting agroforestry on your shamba, ask your extension agent for advice or get in touch with iShamba. The heart of any shamba lies in its soil. Because soil is so precious, it needs to be managed really carefully. A good place to start is with a soil test. This will tell you how healthy your soil is, its pH levels, what type of soil it is, which crops you can grow in your soil, and advice on which fertilizer is best to use. If you follow the soil test recommendations, it can boost your yields. So, how do you take a soil test sample? Firstly, dig up soil samples. Use a soil auger or panga to take a sample 1 feet deep in a zigzag pattern across your shamba. You will need at least 10 samples. Mix all the different samples together in a bucket. The soil is now ready to be scanned and tested. You can find out about how to get your soil tested by contacting your extension officer. Alternatively, contact a Ministry of Agriculture research station near you. A soil test costs about as much as 1 bag of maize. You should do a soil test at least every 3 to 5 years.